Once upon a time, two nations stood on opposite sides of history's great stage. One seemed born to rule forever, blessed with rivers of silver flowing from distant lands. The other was small, often overlooked, with no such glittering gifts. Yet in the long contest for world power, the small one triumphed not through mountains of treasure, but through a new way of thinking about money. The story opens in the late 1400s. Spain, united under Ferdinand and Isabella, sent Christopher Columbus across the ocean in 1492. He found new lands. Soon came the real prize: vast riches in the Americas. In the 1540s, explorers discovered Potosi in the high Andes, a single hill. Cerro Rico held silver in quantities no one had imagined. Miners, many indigenous people under forced labor, dug deep tunnels day and night. They carried heavy loads on their backs, crushed the rock, and melted it into shining bars and coins. The work was dangerous, cave-ins poisonous fumes, and exhaustion claimed countless lives, yet the silver kept coming. By the late E10 Wubaimao, Potosi alone supplied much of the world's silver. The rough mining town exploded into a bustling city of over 100,000 people, complete with grand churches, crowded markets, wealthy merchants who lived like kings, and even a university that drew scholars from afar. Silver crossed the Atlantic in the famous treasure fleets. Dozens of heavily armed galleons sailed in tight convoys from ports like Veracruz and Cartagena. They carried locked chests full of silver coins, gold bars, emeralds, pearls, and exotic goods. English privateers like Francis Drake dreamed of capturing even one ship, as a single prize could make a man wealthy beyond dreams. Most fleets reached Seville safely. There, the king claimed a huge tax called the Quinto Real, literally the royal fifth, and the rest poured into the Spanish economy, financing everything from royal courts to foreign wars. Spain's empire stretched across the globe. It ruled Mexico, Peru, Central America, parts of the southern United States, the Caribbean islands, the distant Philippines, and even territories in Europe. Viceroys governed millions from grand palaces. New foods, potatoes, corn, tomatoes, chocolate, tobacco reached Europe and transformed diets, economies, and even populations forever. The saying, "the empire on which the sun never sets," captured Spain's reach perfectly. Kings like Philip II felt untouchable. They built magnificent palaces such as the vast El Escorial, a combination monastery palace and royal tomb meant to symbolize eternal power. Armies fought across Europe to protect the Catholic faith against Protestantism and rival powers. In 1588, the mighty Armada, 130 ships strong, sailed to crush Protestant England and restore Catholic rule there to the world. Spain appeared invincible. England, however, was very different. A small, misty island of green hills, sheep pastures, fishing villages, and growing towns. Its population hovered around 4 to 5 million. Kings frequently ran out of money and had to beg Parliament for taxes. The navy was modest compared to Spain's religious conflicts under Henry VIII. Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I divided the nation for decades. Losses in earlier continental wars still stung national pride. When the Armada approached in 1588, many expected Spain to win easily, but England survived. Violent storms, later called the Protestant wind, scattered the Armada ships. English vessels harassed the fleet with faster, more maneuverable ships. More importantly, England began to rethink wealth itself. Merchants formed partnerships to share the dangers of long sea voyages. In 1600, Queen Elizabeth granted a charter to the East India Company. Investors purchased shares in the venture. If ships returned loaded with spices, silk, tea, or calico, profits were shared generously. If a ship was lost to storms or pirates, the loss was divided among many shareholders. This sharing of risk encouraged more people, even those of modest means, to invest without betting their entire fortune. London turned into a thriving port and financial hub. Goldsmiths began acting as early bankers, holding deposits, issuing loans, and creating paper notes and bills of exchange that replaced the need to carry heavy coins for big transactions. Trust in paper grew bit by bit as merchants honored their promises. The decisive moment arrived in 1694. England was locked in expensive wars against France under King William III and Queen Mary II. Taxes alone could not pay for the growing armies and expanding navy. A Scottish visionary named William Paterson proposed creating a national bank. A group of wealthy merchants agreed to lend the government £1.2 million in exchange for a royal charter, because Parliament had the real power to raise taxes reliably and could not be ignored by the monarch. Investors felt secure. The Bank of England changed everything. It allowed the government to borrow large sums quickly and steadily year after year. England could plan multi-year wars, construct dozens of warships, and supply troops across Europe and the colonies without depending on the uncertain arrival of treasure ships. Government bonds were sold to ordinary citizens, merchants, widows with savings, and even foreign investors, especially from the wealthy Dutch Republic. Interest rates remained low, often around 5 to 6%, because England's credit was trusted. Cheap, reliable credit became a hidden weapon more powerful than any cannon or galleon. Spain, meanwhile, depended entirely on physical treasure. Fleets arrived in seasonal bursts. Storms, pirates, or enemy attacks left the royal coffers empty at critical times. Kings borrowed heavily from Italian, especially Genoese and German bankers at steep rates. Repayment often failed. Spain declared bankruptcy in 1557, 1575, 1596, 1607, 1627, 1647, and several more times. Each default shattered confidence. Lenders raised rates sharply or refused new loans entirely, forcing the crown into desperate measures like selling offices or seizing private wealth. The massive inflow of silver also created a dangerous side effect. Prices across Europe rose dramatically in what historians call the price revolution, one of history's great influences. In Spain, the impact was worst. A simple loaf of bread, pair of shoes, or bolt of cloth could cost 3 or 4 times more within a generation. Wages did not keep pace, so ordinary families grew poorer despite the kingdom's apparent wealth. The crown taxed heavily, but inflation eroded the real value of the money collected. Spain spent much of its silver on endless wars in the Netherlands, Italy, and Germany, on lavish court life, and on imported luxuries: fine cloth from Flanders, weapons from Milan, tapestries from France. Very little was invested in factories, roads, canals, or new farming techniques to boost long-term productivity. Much of the silver flowed out of Spain to pay for goods made elsewhere. Northern Europe, especially Holland and England, used that money to build banks, expand trade networks, and improve production methods. England adopted better farming techniques, crop rotation, enclosure of common lands, grew new crops, and exported more high-quality wool cloth. Merchants constructed faster, stronger ships designed for long-distance trade. By the late 1600s, England challenged and defeated the Dutch in several naval wars, gaining valuable experience and control of key trade routes. The War of the Spanish Succession, 1701 to 1714, exposed the contrast starkly. When Spain's King Charles II died without an heir, Europe fought over his throne. Spain, allied with France, suffered constant cash shortages. Treasure fleets brought less silver each year as mines aged. Armies mutinied because soldiers went unpaid for months. Creditors either demanded punishing interest or simply refused to lend. England borrowed freely through the Bank of England. Bonds sold quickly to a trusting public and foreign investors. Low interest rates allowed them to build large fleets, supply armies across Europe, and maintain long campaigns without running out of funds. England and its allies prevailed. The Treaty of Utrecht in 1714 awarded England Gibraltar, a vital naval base guarding the Mediterranean, Minorca, and the valuable Asunto contract to supply slaves to Spanish America. These gains opened new trade routes and strengthened England's position immeasurably. Afterward, Spain declined gradually but steadily. Silver production at Potosi and other mines fell as the easiest veins were exhausted and deeper digging became costlier. Mercury needed for refining became scarce and expensive. Colonial rebellions grew, fueled by heavy taxation and distant rule. In the early 1800s, inspired by the American and French revolutions, most of Latin America fought for and won independence under leaders like Simon Bolivar and José de San Martin. Spain lost nearly its entire overseas empire and shrank to a modest European power plagued by instability. England, however, climbed to new heights. The City of London became the undisputed financial capital of the world. Stock trading moved from informal coffee houses to a formal exchange in 1801. Insurance developed rapidly at Lloyd's of London to protect merchant ships against every peril. Banks spread across the country, lending to businesses large and small. Capital flowed freely to promising ventures. Then the Industrial Revolution began in England around 1760. Simple but revolutionary inventions transformed production. The spinning jenny, water frame, and spinning mule dramatically increased textile output. James Watt's improved steam engine provided reliable power for factories and mines. Iron production advanced with coke smelting. Coal mines expanded rapidly to fuel the new machines. Factories sprang up in northern England. Canals connected rivers for cheap transport. And railways soon followed in the 1820s and 1830s, shrinking distances and accelerating trade. Why did this revolution start in England and not Spain? Finance played a central role. Banks lent money to inventors, factory builders, and railway promoters. Investors purchased shares in new companies. Entrepreneurs could borrow against expected future profits. Successful ideas attracted more capital quickly. Productivity soared, goods became cheaper and more abundant, and wealth multiplied across society. By the mid-1800s, Britain produced more than half the world's iron, coal, and cotton cloth, earning the nickname workshop of the world. Spain remained tied to old ways. Nobles and the church controlled vast lands. Strict regulations protected traditional crafts and limited innovation. Few banks existed outside the capital. There was no widespread culture of investment or risk-taking. Wealth stayed locked in land, titles, and luxury rather than flowing into industry and infrastructure. This ancient rivalry still offers powerful lessons today. Some nations rich in oil, gas, diamonds, copper, or other resources fall into a similar trap as Spain. Easy money leads to inflation, corruption, overspending on prestige projects, and weak institutions. When commodity prices drop, debt overwhelms them and investors flee, leaving economic chaos. Other countries, often with few natural resources, focus on building strong systems, clear property laws, independent courts, stable currencies, honest central banks, and open financial markets. They attract capital from around the globe. Businesses thrive, jobs multiply, economies grow steadily even without underground riches. In the modern world of 2026, power flows through reserve currencies, government bonds, central bank policies, and trusted financial systems. Nations that inspire confidence can borrow cheaply on global markets and invest in education, technology, infrastructure, and innovation. Those that print money recklessly, default on debts, or erode trust watch their influence fade and capital flee to safer havens. Consider the contrast in action today. Countries with vast natural wealth sometimes repeat Spain's era. They rely on resource windfalls rather than building lasting institutions. Meanwhile, nations with disciplined fiscal policies and transparent markets draw trillions in foreign investment, fueling innovation in fields like renewable energy, biotechnology, and digital finance. The winners are those who understand that sustainable power comes not from extracting finite riches, but from creating systems that multiply wealth through trust and efficiency. The hidden economic fight between treasure and capital never truly ended. It simply changed forms. In every era, the side that masters trust, credit, and intelligent use of resources pulls ahead. History whispers the same truth again and again. Raw wealth dazzles for a moment, but structured systems endure for centuries. Spain once commanded oceans of silver from the earth. England mastered oceans of capital through trust, innovation, and reliable systems. Treasure eventually runs out or loses value through inflation and misuse. Well-managed capital, built on promises kept in systems that work, grows without limit. In the quiet, hidden fight for global control, systems always defeat mere piles of metal. The lesson echoes through time. Real power is not found in vaults of gold or silver. It is created in ledgers of trust, sealed by reliable rules, and multiplied by wise investment. Look at today's world. Watch which nations draw global savings and investment. See who funds tomorrow's artificial intelligence, green energy, space exploration, and medical breakthroughs. See who truly leads the next chapter of history. Spain ruled with glittering treasure pulled from mountains. England ruled with clever systems built from paper, promises, and trust. And in the long story of human progress, clever systems win every time.